visitors for being here with us. Perhaps there's someone here this morning, you're visiting, you're not really sure if you should be here. Maybe you're thinking, I'm just going to try this out, see what it's all about. But in the end, I'm probably going to go home and go back to my hopeless situation. There's nothing that I can do. I've done so many bad things. Surely God is not going to forgive me for what I've done. Maybe there's members that feel this way. Maybe you've done some things as members and you find yourself going through the motions just in case. If this describes you, this lesson is definitely for you. Mark chapter 5 talks about this, teaches that Jesus has the power and he's willing to use that power. It's interesting how Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all focus in on certain things, and they all work together. Yes, we can get the full picture when we put them all together, but when we focus on just one book, one gospel account, then we're able to zero in on certain attributes of Jesus, certain details that really work together for a certain purpose. Matthew comes around and says, this is the king you've been waiting for, the one that has been predicted from of old time. He is the one. Here's his genealogy, here's all the prophecies, and so on. And then Luke says, Greeks, you've been looking for the perfect human specimen. Here he is, Jesus Christ. John comes around and says, he is God. Everybody should follow him. He is the God-man. He's the Son of Man. He's the Son of God. He has the truth. There's no one else to go to. And when you look at Mark, Mark comes around and he says, Jesus is powerful. Jesus is powerful. He has done all these miracles. We're just going to go really fast through this narrative, but we're going to focus in on these miracles because you have to see the power that Jesus has. He's a powerful king. But not only that, Mark presents Jesus as the servant, the one that uses his power for selfless reasons. He has power, but he's not just doing some entertaining show for people. He is using it so that he could help. We see that here in Mark chapter 5. Well, Mark chapter 5 details the account of Jesus healing a demon-possessed man. Now, Jesus went around healing and restoring people who had demons. But this one was one that Mark felt needed to be elaborated on. And perhaps we're going to see why. Because the power that this man had from the demons was no match for the power of Jesus. And Mark is going to focus in on more of the power of the demons so that whatever power we see that they have, it's no match for the power of Jesus. We see a hopeless man. We just read about him. We just heard about him in verses 1 through 5. Yours might say Gadarenes or the Gergesenes or the Gerasenes. Just different ways to spell this same area east of the Sea of Galilee. So Jesus just calmed the storm, and he makes it to the shoreline, and right when he makes it there, going on the land, he finds this man. Actually, Matthew chapter 8, the corresponding part of this, there Matthew 8 says that there were two men. Mark is going to really elaborate more on one of the men. There is no contradiction. Mark does not say there's only one man. He just, for whatever reason, wants to focus in on this one man. Perhaps he had more power than the other one. Maybe he had more demons than the other one. Maybe the other one wasn't healed for whatever reason, or did not go preach like this other man. Whatever it is, Mark is just focusing in on this one man. Now, this man had an unclean spirit. But you look at verse 9, you look at verse 12, and there's actually more spirits, more demons, and they all work together, and they all work as one spirit. They're all in unison, but really so that they can go against the plan of God. And there it says that no one could tame him, no one could bind him. And I know that we don't see this, maybe depending on the translation. If yours says fetters, then maybe that gives you more of the idea. But it says that they have shackles and chains. When you look at the way they did things back then, if they were to really make sure that a person is tied down by chains, they're going to do it by the hands, and they're going to do it by the fetters, which are the chains that go on the feet, around the ankles. So you think about this, you have a strong man that's able to break apart the chains, and maybe in our minds we're thinking, yeah, I can kind of see that, we got strong people today, you get chains and you break them, maybe it's possible, but you got fetters on the legs, and he's able to shatter those into pieces. Now you think about the power, not only with the arms and the back and the shoulders, but with the leg muscles, everything you see in this man is powerful. He's strong. He's able to break the chains that are made out of metal. He's able to break them. This is the power that Jesus is up against. And they try to bind him like an animal. He's acting like an animal. He's strong like an animal. And so let's tie him up. That didn't work. And so they tried to tame him, it says. Well, if we can't cage him up, let's try to tame him like an animal, and just maybe he'll do what we say in that way. We think about animals today. There are some animals that we have successfully tamed. Some that are just real quick, dogs, birds, some cats. But then there are animals that we can tame to a certain point, but we will not let them out in public. Like tigers, there's only a select people that are able to tame them to a certain point, but even they have to be careful. Perhaps they tried to tame him like a tiger, maybe a lion or gorilla. Of course, we see that they tried to just tie him up. There's no taming him, so there's animals that we just can't, like great white shark. You don't see people just taming those things. Hippopotamus, believe it or not, is a very hard animal to tame, and so we just cage them up. We're able to do something, but with this man, they were not able to do anything. They could not control him. The result was he was in a hopeless state. Luke will come around and really, zero in on how this man was so hopeless. He had no clothes. He had no home. This was such a long time. And so Luke is bringing out descriptions like that. Well, Mark says, okay, that's true, but let's look at the power. He is not able to be tamed. He's not able to be caged. He's not able to be bound. Jesus has the power to save this man. Verse 6, when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God that you do not torment me." There are three aspects of Jesus that he admitted, that he acknowledged, that he confessed, if you will. His name, he knows exactly who he is, but he also knows the power he has, his position, his authority. You are Jesus, and you are Son of the Most High God. It is sad that many people that Jesus encountered around that time, they did not believe that he was the Son of the Most High God. And here are these demons. They know exactly who he is and the power he possesses. They say, "I implore you." Maybe yours says, "I adjure thee," depending on your translation. Same thing. "I implore you." I'm begging you by God. They're swearing by God that you don't torment me. Why are they putting it in this way? "I adjure thee by God. I implore you by God." You see, God, he placed limits on Satan and the demons. They cannot go past the limits. Okay, so they have not killed this man, but they're able to take hold of his body. They're able to change his strength and to do things that he would not normally be able to do. This is the limit that God has allowed them. Not that God is making them, but He's allowing them, and they're definitely going to the limit. But they won't go past it. And they're saying, well, I adjure thee by God. By God, we're not going past the limit, so don't torment me. 1 Corinthians 10:13 tells us that no man is tempted beyond that what we can handle. And so we know that God puts limits on them. We know that from Job chapter 1, Job chapter 2. We also know that this is being allowed because God is showing that Jesus has power over these unclean spirits or demons. One might say, well, why did God allow this in the first century? Well, here is one of the biggest reasons. If it didn't happen, we would not be able to see how powerful Jesus is. But now we are able to. Zechariah would talk about this. Zechariah chapter 13, verse 2 gives a prediction that there's coming a time when all the unclean spirits will be taken out. Well, here it is. It's being fulfilled. Look at verse 8. For he said to him, come out of the man, unclean spirit. Then he asked him, what is your name? And he answered, saying, my name is Legion, for we are many. Verse 10, also he begged him earnestly that he would not send him out of the country. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there near the mountains. So all the demons begged him, saying, send us to the swine, that we may enter them. And at once, there's that word that's usually put as immediately, instantly, forthwith, at once. It was quick. Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine. There were about 2,000. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned into the sea. Simple words. You didn't have to have this long, drawn-out ritual. No long exorcism that lasted for days. Legion. You think about that. When it came to Rome, their army regiment, their troop, the legion was consisting of about 3,000 to 6,000 men. And the demon or demons that all act as one, and so that's why there's a spirit and then there's demons. It's plural, but still, technically speaking, there's more than one demon. And if the name is Legion and he says we're many, we're talking about 3,000 to 6,000 demons. Now there's only 2,000 swine, but if 3,000 to 6,000 can fit into one man, then more than one can fit into each individual pig. So no problem there. Jesus permitted them to go there. They were not to go anywhere else. And they did exactly that. They did not go anywhere else. They were permitted to go there, and that's where they went. Now, I know that some of you here would relate or at least understand quicker what it means to lose 2,000 pigs. That's a lot of money. Think about that. That's a lot of money. That was their money back then. It's money today. It's money back then. Now, Luke will bring out that the people would get mad because they were seized with great fear. So they were fearing for the wrong reasons and the wrong way. Perhaps just too much fear that was hindering them to come and follow Jesus. But the whole city was mad. Matthew would bring up the whole city. And they're all mad. They're upset. They want him to leave. Why? Because he just took 2,000 of their pigs. Right here is a steep cliff that is in the east side of Galilee. You think about 2,000 pigs falling off that. They would all fall to their death. They were materialistic. They couldn't get past this. Now I want you to think about this as well. When Jesus got there, that man, of course Matthew brings up two men, either way, those two men would not allow people to pass. They were not allowed to go down the way. And then there's pigs. Okay, think about people other than Jesus who would just happen to come to the east side of Galilee and they'd come on the shore. Maybe they thought, well, I see some pigs over there and they're just kind of there by themselves. Let's just take them real quick and go on the other side of the sea. But they would not be able to, just looking at the context clues, they would not be able to do that. Why? Because the men were in the way, these demon-possessed men. Perhaps there was another reason why they didn't like this. They just lost money, but you took away our protection. This man was protecting our property, and he took away the property. These people were materialistic. Many people rejected. Later on in the book, in Mark chapter 8, there Jesus gives a lesson, and he's talking about how one soul is worth more than the entire world. I wonder, while the disciples are listening to this lesson, did they think about this event? Now, Jesus, he knew what was going to happen. The whole city would be mad. He knew that. He knew they would all reject, but there's this one soul who needs salvation. One soul is worth more than the entire world. The man's desire to follow is given in verses 18 and following. Well, let's go back to verse 14. So those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and the country. And they went out to see what was that had happened. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion, sitting and clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who saw it told how it happened to him who had been demon-possessed and about the swine. Then they began to plead with him to depart from their region. So, based on what we just read, that means that when he had the demons, he was insane. He was not in his right mind. He was doing things that were very harmful to others and to himself. He was cutting himself. He was doing harm to himself, and he would not let anybody pass by the way. And when they saw this, they didn't say, "Oh, okay, well, you've been pretending this whole time. We knew it. We knew that there was nothing wrong with you." No, they didn't say that. Because beforehand, they knew exactly that this was a demon possession. This man had superhuman strength. There was no way that he was pretending. And so when they saw him in his right mind and okay, then they realized, oh, Jesus is more powerful than that man. Have you ever met someone who was too afraid of God? There are people out there, you try to ask for a Bible study or invite them to service, and they'll say, well, no, I need to stay away from the church building. I need to stay away from God because I just know how he's going to look at me. It is not, the belief is not the problem, but their fear is too great. It's not in the right kind of fear. And so their thinking is, if I go over there, God is just going to strike me down. But this here in Mark chapter 5 should teach us that Jesus just saved this man who was out of his mind and was doing things to himself and to others. And Jesus was willing to help this man. The man, he desired to follow. Look at verse 18. And when he got into the boat, he who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might be with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you. And he departed to begin to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. So what is the big lesson for us in this whole thing? What can we draw out of this? Because many of the same principles and, the tenets here, they apply today. This demon-possessed man can represent those who are stuck in their what seems to be hopeless, sinful state. No one can bring us into fellowship with God except Jesus Christ. This poor soul was crying for a long time, cutting himself day and night. His home, well, he didn't have a home, but where he was residing was where the tombs were. You think about a sinful state for a person, it's like them being in a dead state. They are in a place of spiritual tombs. But God has called us out of that place, Colossians chapter 1 and verse 13. And in this kingdom of light, Jesus heals our spiritual maladies. He does so with simple words that guides us in what we need to do to make it right. And Satan knows this, and he's going to try to take the simplicity that is in Christ, and he's going to try to dismantle that, try to confuse the hearer. But God has a way of showing those who really want to know the truth. He gives it to them. He doesn't hold it back. However, like those pig farmers, many will reject. Many have rejected. And it will continue this way. And so, as we go out there, we who have been healed of our spiritual maladies, we're going to be like this man, and we're going to go out there and preach. But we look at Jesus, we look at what he did, the greatness that he showed, and how people still didn't follow him. It's not going to be that much different for us. Many people are not going to listen to us, but that shouldn't stop us because it did not stop Jesus Christ. Now, the Bible has so much evidence, geography, secular history, archaeology, psychology, science, that you can look at all of those and put it to the test, and the Bible stands true. The Bible by itself has no contradictions. Actually, it all works together so that we can get the full picture. And we look at how it was made, how it was produced, how it's preserved. We can show them all this evidence. We show them the evidence of creation, that there has to be a God. And we put everything together, and they see all this, and they're like, well, we see the evidence. There is a God. This is from God. But I can't change my life. You have to give up my material things. I have to give up the way I make money. I have to give up the way I spend my money. I have to give up the way I steal other people's money. You see, there's nothing wrong with money in itself, but it's how we get it, how we use it, and if people are stealing it, it's definitely wrong, and that is what hinders many people. Show them this chapter that Jesus is willing to help. And even after people rejected, he went on to other people. He didn't stop his ministry. Now, this demon-possessed man, when he was healed, what did he want to do? What was his initial desire? There in verse 18, that he might be with him. I want to be with you, Jesus. Take me with you. For those who come up out of the watery grave of baptism, what is our thought? We want to be with Jesus. That's a good desire. But we're still here. So what are we going to do in the meantime? In the meantime, we have the same commission that was given to this man. Go home to your friends. Tell them what great things the Lord has done for you. That's given to us as well. Great commission. That's what they did in Acts chapter 8. That's what Paul did as he went around all the Gentile world. That's what Peter did when he was there in Jerusalem. All the apostles, all the disciples, they were all preaching. Because we're all given this same commission while we're here. Kind of reminds us of Philippians chapter 1, 23 and 24, where Paul is given his mindset. For I'm hard pressed between the two, having a desire to be with Christ. I don't want to be with Christ. But then there's this over here, which is that's far better. But nevertheless, what does he say? To remain in the flesh is more needful for you. In other words, I want to be with Jesus. That's far better. Now, I can't end my life to go there. That's not how it's going to work. So what am I going to do while I'm here? Well, I'm going to do what Jesus wants. I'm going to help the brethren, and I'm going to go preach the gospel. All of this lines up with today. It's a real event, yes, but it also shows us the picture of what Jesus does for us. We are to preach his ability to heal. We are to preach the motivation to heal, which is his compassion. You see, Jesus is so powerful. He showed his power over these demons. Why? Well, he did it because he's helping this man. And so that others would know who he is, so that they can find salvation. He's thinking about others. We need to use the abilities that have been given to us. He used his power, his ability for us. Well, he gives us abilities. What are we going to do with it? We're going to use it for his glory. Perhaps there's someone here who feels like their situation is hopeless. Maybe you feel like you're so deep in sin that there's no one to save you from the grasp of Satan. But we know from this story that God, Jesus, is greater than Satan. Greater than all the demons. Thousands of demons. Jesus is greater. There's no way that we can say, well, the devil, he's keeping me here. He's making me do all these things and I can't help it. No. We learn here that that is not the case. Jesus has the power. If we come to him and we do what he says, what he wants, he can heal you and he can get you ready for the coming of that great day. Brethren, let us stay motivated to preach this all-powerful Jesus. Now, there is no one else that we are to preach. We are given this, and we are to give people the gospel. And let's contemplate on this power of Jesus and think about your own life as we stand and sing.